this past week there was a free kick on the top of the box, and it was like David Beckham, like just like David's zone, right? Like where he used to live. And he always sits in like shouting distance for me after I get subbed out. So I just yelled. I was like, David, this is for you. And he comes over and is like, this will be me. Yes.
Welcome back to the Player Manager Podcast. I am world-renowned YouTuber Zealand Shannon. Who put that in? Oh, somebody put that in there. That wasn't me, definitely. Well, along with the Zealand Shannon, didn't even get to the name. I laughed before that. That's a good sign. With the biggest Taylor Swift fan on Inter Miami, Julian Gressel. How was the concert, Julian? Do you have a good time? Oh, yeah.
Look at this. Look at this. Do you know what this is?
I'm assuming that's Taylor Swift's entire written history on your wrist there. Is that what I'm looking at? Wow. How'd you end up with that? What happened? You get bedazzled?
Yeah, so for anybody that isn't seeing this video, I'm showing my wrist with all the friendship bracelets that we own as a household. So these aren't all mine. I only had a few. My wife was very much into trading and all those types of things that are going on at a Taylor Swift concert. But yes, we went to the Taylor Swift concert on Sunday night, and it was great. It was really, really cool. I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan in general. Maybe on Inter Miami, yes, but not in general. I don't know all the songs, but I knew quite a few, especially the older ones when I was younger. I listened to them a little bit more, I feel like. So
were you in the bleachers while she was wearing short skirts?
That's right.
I have those.
That's right. Yeah.
There we go. I didn't just totally out myself with that. No, but she's been touring, I feel like, for 2 years. The show was still good. I don't know.
Yeah, the show was great. I mean, it was raining almost all night long. And she came on at 8 and got off stage at like 11:15 or something. And it was, just one big party, and everybody was rocking out. There were probably more like 13, 14-year-old girls in my section than dudes. But I was one of them, and I was up there dancing and wearing my bracelets just like I am now. And that's it.
Hell yeah. No, I mean, you're a girl dad. You were ready for that. That's your crowd.
I was. And I feel like this will be the only chance I get to go to a Taylor Swift concert, because as my girls get older, my wife is just going to take them and not me. So
that's true. So you were able to file that one memory away, collect a truly remarkable number of friendship bracelets, which I gotta just for, I don't want to break your immersion if you're watching this podcast. We don't just get into a group call and instantly start the podcast. We hang out and talk for like 15 or so minutes. What are we going to, we already have it laid out. The producer. Yeah. I did not know he was wearing all those friendship bracelets until we actually started the podcast. Remarkable subterfuge from Julian Gressel. Big things happen to the Player Manager universe this weekend, obviously, besides just a Taylor Swift concert. Julian and, Leo Messi and all the guys set the single season points record that we managed to somehow, I actually can't believe this happened. We managed to not jinx you guys winning the single season points record by talking about it multiple times in a ridiculous match that I am quite honestly glad that I did not watch live, because I would have been having a heart attack for you. You ended up winning 6-2. It doesn't look nearly as close as it was for a little while in there. And of course, Messi had a hat trick because it was a big match and all that fun stuff. The MLS Cup is also kicked off as well. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. And you guys will be playing against Atlanta United, the team that won last night. So we're going to talk about that game, make some predictions and all that fun stuff. And Kevin Egan's going to be joining us, one of the presenters. That's such a European word for me to use. It's infecting my brain. But one of the presenters for MLS TV on Apple TV, he's going to join us and talk shop. And that's going to be fantastically informative for people catching up on what's going on in the MLS playoffs. One of the most defining parts of these MLS playoffs that I just found in the news, and something I wanted to bring up to you immediately to ask you why you don't have this, Julian, is the Leo Messi cam on TikTok. Have you heard about this?
I think I saw it today somewhere that I guess there's going to be a camera just on Leo, and that's going to be live streamed on TikTok. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's going to be a camera. And this is twofold. One, people are going to call this the Americanization of football, right? Yank nonsense or whatever I see around. But two, this is something that's definitely going to happen a lot more. They're going to have a live stream on TikTok that is just a camera following Messi around the entire field.
Okay. Interesting.
Is that something you would watch, I mean, you're obviously going to be playing, but is it like when you watch a Messi game? Like, I don't know if I would actually watch that.
I don't know. I don't think so. No, I mean, I would be interested in the game, right? But I feel like I almost like I like this game, right? I like the game part. So I would watch the tactical view rather than just one single player. But with Leo, I mean, when he has the ball, he's electric. So whenever I hope we can get in the ball a lot, then it would be fun.
And you need to make sure that you seek out Leo Messi for like a high five or a hug at some point during the game, so you can make an appearance on the Leo Messi live stream on TikTok. That's going to be, your followers are going to go through the roof. It's going to be insane. That won't be the only individual feed, though, because the match that you guys play against Atlanta United, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be live streamed in Times Square as well. So you'll know where I'll be. I'll be hanging out in Times Square to watch your first playoff match. But the playoffs are all this fun stuff in the future. And we'll have more information about the whole Times Square live stream thing. I don't even know how that's going to work. If you've ever been to Times Square, I live in New York. It's complete and utter chaos. There's just going to be a bunch of people wandering around and a couple of people stopping traffic to try and watch the game. And can't wait. There's going to be a lot of "I'm walking here's" flying around. And
we need a Zealand live cam for this. While you're there,
I'll just be standing there getting pushed around by the crowd, like, "Hey, Messi, Julian."
Exactly.
Yeah, like, I swear I know that guy, and there's some guy on the street selling churros is going to be like, "Yeah, sure, buddy. That you don't know that guy. That's Tony Cruz. You don't know Tony Cruz. Ridiculous." No, but I did a bad job of this because before we get into the actual playoffs, we need to talk about the crazy night that you guys had. So we'll dive into that now. If you missed this match, I feel bad for you. I feel bad for me. Because you guys were playing against New England Revolution in a match that you should fairly comfortably win, right? Like, you would never admit that because you are the nicest person on the face of the earth, but just based off of the standings, it's a mathematical fact. But of course, as has become my favorite segment on this podcast, you guys gave up the first goal.
What should be a thrilling MLS decision day. It's an early chance for Luca Langoni. MLS second chance and in!
Right. And then you gave up the second goal as well, which is a new segment on the podcast. You guys don't do that nearly as much.
Yusuf back. Barrero! Oh, through calendar! It's given! It's a goal for New England!
And you're losing 2-0. What is going through your mind when you're losing 2-0 to the New England Revolution in this one?
In this one, my mind is almost like, well, either we're going to come back and it's going to be great, or it's a nice little lesson that we're taking for the playoffs, because ultimately it didn't really matter, right? Like, we were going to celebrate after with the trophy. We were going to have the families out on the field, celebrate with the supporters. All that type of stuff was already pre-planned, and we were going to do that anyway. So it would have been, a nice lesson for us to take into the playoffs, that anybody can beat you. But ultimately, it didn't go that way, and we ended up tying the game really quickly. I think within 2-3 minutes at the end of the first half, and then it took someone very special to come on and kind of do the rest. So it was overall a successful night where we ultimately clinched the points record as well, which puts a little cherry on top.
Yeah, how much does that actually mean? Now that you have it, we talked about what it could mean while you were chasing it, but how much does it mean to actually be a part of this team that has gotten more points in MLS history than any other team? In your previous MLS Cup winning teams that you played on, any great team in MLS history you can think of, David Beckham's LA Galaxy, they didn't get this many points, right? Yeah. In MLS as you guys did. How does that sink in now?
I mean, it feels special. It feels like we've had a really, really, obviously a really good season, and a season that I think we'll mostly remember as that. And that's something I'm very proud of. I'm proud of the fact that we did it. I think throughout the summer without Leo and without Luis, and they didn't end up scoring 40 goals or whatever and really carry this team. I think they each scored 20, which is still a lot. Obviously, and they were carrying this team for quite some time, but at the same time we had games in there that the whole depth of the squad was counted upon, and that is something I think I'm really proud of. That one, I was able to be on the field a lot for these games as well, and and kind of put my stamp on the season, but also for other guys. And it was a whole club effort, and this club is so young still, and to set something like this as like a kind of, set your mark almost is something really cool. And I do think it'll be broken eventually. And hopefully it's going to be by us next season. But even down the line, we'll see. I think it is going to be broken. I think we had a lot of ties in there, to be honest with you. So, but for now, we'll enjoy it. But at the end of the day, I almost feel like it's going to be not like a waste, but almost like I really wish we would win MLS Cup too. And if we don't do that, then it might be like a little wrinkle in there that I'm not going to love. So we got to cap it off the right way with an MLS Cup.
It's almost like a new season is starting right now. You've played the whole regular season. So it does feel like that. That's what I imagine on the outside looking in, it feels like it's a new season. Everything gets reset to zero.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And that's what I think every year when you go into the playoffs, that's how it feels. And that's how it ends up being as well, because you have a team like Atlanta United who scraps in last, second on the last day, and now all of a sudden they're in the playoffs, and they're playing against us, feeling quite well, and they're the 8th seed. So it's certainly something that even in years prior, last year we won it as a number 3 seed. You don't have to win the league or be number 1 seed in order to make a run at MLS Cup. It's something totally different. Knockout games are different. This best of 3 series is different. So it's certainly a new season. Yeah.
Shout out to Dax McCarty, by the way, scored his penalty last night, friend of the podcast. I can't even imagine what was going through his mind, because that penalty shootout determined whether he'd get to keep playing or not. But of course, he scored it. He went first, which I just thought was a nice homage to the experience.
Remember how we talked about how he might get a chance to get Leo to sign the jersey that he traded in the Leagues Cup and all that stuff? The first thing I thought about yesterday was that he now has a chance to get him to sign it himself, and I don't have to do it for him.
No. You got the whole best of 3 to try and pop the question. Maybe when the series is over, and there's not quite the competitive edge, Dax is obviously a competitive guy, then you could just be like, hey. And that's it. You're already doing a lot of ferrying around for the giveaway we have on this podcast. You got a lot on your plate when it comes to getting...
It's I know, but Leo will sign it for Dax, I'm sure. And I also did see him sign that Leagues Cup ball today, so that signature's on there.
Ooh, more news to come about that at the end of the podcast. But back to the ridiculous match. You mentioned that you guys tied it up almost right away. It was Luis Suarez that scored both goals. We'll give him and his knees credit for hanging in there and finding a couple of goals. By halftime,
Taylor Martinez continuing his run. It's Suarez and Suarez. Here's Suarez cutting it back. Suarez again!
You have to feel like you've got this in the bag. But the main reason I'm going back to this is because we got a question in on Instagram. I know we normally do questions at the end, but this one, Scott Rosenthal, this one's for you. Because I want to know the answer. People never really get to ask these sorts of questions when you just see a random thing like this on TV. But Scott Rosenthal has asked, Julian, we got to know, what did the fans say to you in the 31st minute when you were about to take a corner? Do you remember?
Was there like a video of that on the stream?
The way he's asking is, it makes me think that on like watching the game on TV, it was very clear that you like heard and maybe acknowledged or responded to something in the corner while you were getting ready for a corner. You remember what that was?
I remember, because it was like every corner, and I feel like I've had like 4 or 5 corners. He started talking to you. Or started talking to me, and I remember exactly what he says. He just goes, "Hit Suarez, hit Suarez. Suarez is going to be open. Hit Suarez." And I'm like, "Well, there's 15 guys in this box. Like, what? I'm not just gonna. He's not open. One, but that was my thinking. But then what I responded, because the plays that we had, they were set up for Luis as well. I told him. I was like, on the first one, I told him, okay, watch, first post, Suarez is going to be open. He's going to get a header. It ended up being cleared by the defender because my service wasn't good enough. But then on the second one, I walk over, okay, this time, second post, watch. he's going to get a header. So I'm going to do the sign for a second post play. And sure enough, he got a free either header or volley, I forget. And then the third time I walked over there, he goes, just like last time, just do it like last time. Two hands, just like last time. And I put one hand up. I'm like, no, we're going back to first post, which ended up still working out. I think one of our players actually was kind of in the way for him. So, yeah, but that was kind of the sequence. And so every time I walked over there, he was trying to tell me to just hit Suarez. And I think 2 or 3 out of the 4 maybe total I had worked. And he actually got the first touch on it. Fortunately, nothing came about and he didn't score. But yeah, he was just yelling at me, Suarez. And I was like, okay, watch, first post. And then I said, okay, watch, second post.
So does that sort of thing happen all the time? Or was this a unique guy in the corner? Because you're going to encourage everybody that listens to this podcast to try and guess a set piece play in the corner now. I would.
Well, the plays are preset anyway. Like nobody can sway kind of my decision. I do have a decision in a sense if it's like first post, second post, or kind of short or middle of the goal, like that type of stuff. I can usually make the decision. I give the signals for that. If I'm the one taking the corners, if Leo is the one taking the corners, then he would do that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they can talk all they want. I'm still going to make the decision at the end of the day, and hopefully it'll end up the way we all wanted to, which is a goal. You know, that's all he wanted. He wanted Suarez to score, which I wanted to as well, because obviously we would have scored and would have found a way back in the game, and I would have gotten an assist as well.
And obviously, eventually, Suarez got a couple of goals anyways. So the guy was onto something eventually in one way or another. But the second half, you actually subbed out for Leo Messi, which I know that's not the first time you've done that, but that's got to still just be a surreal experience to run off and high five freaking Lionel Messi running on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it is surreal, and it's really strange when you get subbed out and the whole stadium goes absolutely nuts. Like that type of feeling is a little bit different. You know, like
about that, dude.
It's different because like you know you'd kind of like, I don't know, like that's I guess something to get used to. But then obviously Leo comes in and you're like, okay, makes sense. Yeah, I gave him the magic touch in that little hug that I had with him. So he would go on and score a hat trick.
And Messi again. Oh, round Arriaga. Messi! Maybe another chance for Messi. He's in. Messi! Oh, yeah! Campana turning, flicking. Suarez across. Messi! The hat trick!
Yeah, it's surreal to have be replaced by a guy like Leo Messi. I mean, that's insane.
No, he came in and just completely took over the game and seems to be in fine form, even though, as it was much covered, he did not win the Golden Boot that went to Benteke, who actually didn't even make the playoffs, which I find a very impressive accomplishment in its own right, to win the Golden Boot on a team that doesn't finish top half in your conference. But then you have the celebration, and Gianni Infantino just showed up. Apparently, did you know that was happening in advance, or did he just walk over and go, hello?
Well, I knew it was somewhat of a special night, obviously, because of the supporter shield celebration. So David Beckham was there. Obviously, all the owners are there. And when I got subbed out, so our bench is right next to the owner's suite. So the owners are right there. Usually Chris Henderson is right there. They're like all kind of like, sometimes they come over after I get subbed out and like give you a fist bump, a good job or something. There was actually this past week, there was a free kick on the top of the box, and it was like David Beckham, like just like David's zone, right? Like where he used to live. And he always sits in like shouting distance from me after I get subbed out. So I just yelled, I was like, David, this is for you. And he comes over and is like, this will be me. Yes. So we had a nice little moment there because it was later in the game. We knew we were going to win as well. So I kind of made a little joke with him, but it was, David. And then a few rows or a few seats over there was Gianni Infantino. And, I at first didn't even recognize him, didn't even see him really. And then somebody pointed it out to me. I think Chris Henderson and I spoke because he usually stands kind of next to me on the bench or next to the bench area there. And Chris Henderson pointed him out to me and was like, yeah, he's here. And he's going to announce after the game that we're going to be in the Club World Cup next year. And then I was like, okay, that was a nice special surprise that he's there, and makes that announcement as we were standing up on stage after the game.
I'm pretty sure that he was regretting showing up after you guys went down 2-0. He's thinking this is going to be not quite as an exciting announcement as he was hoping. That announcement in itself created a bit of buzz. I know in my position as somebody that just talks about a bunch of random soccer stuff on the internet, I definitely encountered particularly Columbus Crew fans that were, I would say, they felt like they had suffered an effrontery by not being included. I've gone to great pains to explain that it's the host spot and FIFA can basically give it to whoever they want. And of course, they're going to give it to Leo Messi in the first place. But the other point that I made, just to save you from making this point, because you're such a nice guy, you probably won't, that Lionel Messi and Inter Miami and you guys made it a very easy PR job for them to put Inter Miami into the Club World Cup because you won the Supporters' Shield. Right, you were the best team in the league over the course of the regular season. Does any of that noise kind of get into the team? I'd be surprised if it didn't in a major way, but do you think about it? Do you notice it? Did you have any thoughts on it?
I mean, honestly, I always thought we were going to get invited. It's an invitation. It's not a way that we really work their way into it, right? I think that's kind of how I understand it.
Yeah. So obviously for those that don't know, sorry, for those I'll catch up. Yeah. I live in this bubble where I just assume everybody knows qualifying processes for the Club World Cup, right? But that's not true. So FIFA Club World Cup, it's this new thing. It existed before, but they've revamped it. 32 teams, all of the champions over the last 4 years from each continent. Some other teams get in from coefficient, like there's more European teams, same as the actual World Cup, because there's better European clubs and so on. Only one team from Oceania, but there's only 31 qualifying spots, and then there is one spot for the host nation that FIFA decides who represents the host nation. That is the spot Inter Miami is getting as the Supporters' Shield champion, now that you're caught up as you were.
Yeah, so, I mean, for me, I always had a feeling that obviously we're going to get in just because of the profile of the club, the profile of the players that we have, and then that type of stuff. It's tough for me to say if it's fair or not because it's just FIFA's decision. It's FIFA's tournament. It's not really my job to be here and say we didn't really earn this. I mean, we were the best team this season, so there is a way for us to say that, we did earn it. On the other side, I do understand people that are saying that the Supporters' Shield is not a fully MLS recognized trophy. It's one that the supporter groups created, and it's not really an official trophy that we won, all those types of things. But at the end of the day, we were the best team this year. I think we've shown that throughout the 34 games by, being first in the standings by however many points, and actually beating the points record and all that type of stuff. So, there is soccer merit for us to be in that tournament, even though it might not be an official qualification in that sense. But, so I do understand both sides a little bit. And again, I'm happy we're in it. I'm excited to play in it next year. It'll be a cool little tournament that we get to talk about here more on the podcast, hopefully.
Oh, it's way off in the future right now. But the more you think about the Club World Cup and all of the clubs that are going to be participating in it and the opportunity that it is to play in that, even though it's a new tournament, that's going to be so freaking cool. I'm excited through you, as a part of this podcast, that's just going to be a part of the life of this podcast. Which, conspiracy theory, maybe Infantino just put Inter Miami in because they wanted this podcast to help promote the Club World Cup.
I should have asked him to come on then. I shook his hand after. I should have been a little bit more forthcoming. I think with the announcement, what he did say was that we were going to get to host the first game in Miami.
Really?
So the opening game.
Yeah, Hard Rock Stadium, right?
Yes, we'll be in Miami against Hard Rock Stadium, and I'm manifesting it right now. It'll be against Bayern Munich. My absolute favorite team in the world that we will be playing against in a competitive match, not a friendly. and we'll win. No, I'm just kidding. We'll see.
Would that be you? Hey, I honestly think the two MLS teams in there, Seattle and you guys, are going to give a better showing than people are expecting at the Club World Cup, but we'll find out soon enough, right?
I mean,
You've accomplished a lot of things.
Sorry, it'll be right in the middle of our season, so we'll be like firing. And these guys are all going to be tired at the end of the year and might not even want to be there really, because there is still chatter about, I don't know, some other stuff happening with that tournament, right? So boycotting and all those types of things, and whatever. That's more your world, but sorry I interrupted.
No, I clearly it wasn't that important. I already forgot what I wanted to talk about, but there is the story of Chelsea leaving 3 players off of their Conference League roster. They specifically said they are resting them because they know it's a particularly long season with the Club World Cup coming up at the end of the year. So some clubs like Chelsea, I know, is taking it very seriously to try. Cole Palmer is not on their Conference League roster until the knockouts because they don't want him to play too many matches before the Club World Cup. So if you have to play
resting
Cole Palmer,
it for Miami matchup. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, you want to talk about the players being overburdened. Cole Palmer skipped an international duty because of fatigue in September, a month into the season. So those people that are saying players might be playing too many matches, they might have a point. But playing against Bayern Munich in a competitive match, I know you've accomplished a lot. If that does come to pass, would that be like the most magic moment you could possibly imagine in your career?
The most magic one, I don't know. It would be a really, really special one, that's for sure. I almost played against them as a friendly with DC United. They had a friendly scheduled in the week before I got traded, so that was nice. But yeah, I mean, it would mean a lot, playing against Bayern Munich in a competitive match in the Club World Cup. Like, those are things you dream about, and when you do sign and when you watch as a kid, when you play, all those things, like, you imagine yourself and being in the highest of highs and in the top of the sport and everything. And, obviously I would rather be maybe playing for Bayern Munich. And when I was a kid, I'm surely imagined that more so than playing for Inter Miami against Bayern Munich. But hey, playing on Inter Miami with a guy named Leo Messi and Luis Suarez and all these other guys, and in the Club World Cup, I think is going to be special no matter who we play. If might not even be Bayern, right? It might be Barca. No, Barca is not in it. But it might be Real Madrid.
Real Madrid to be there. I mean,
yeah, Real Madrid or Dortmund even, or Juventus, or those types of clubs. Like, oh man, that's gonna be very special. But got some time until then.
Or three-time reigning African champions Al Ahly from Egypt.
Yeah.
But also,
Exactly.
The cross-cultural experience of that whole thing's going to be one of maybe the coolest parts. But most important question, you play Bayern Munich right now. Whose jersey are you asking for?
Oh, that is so hard. That is so hard. Probably Müller or Kane.
Oh, Kane would be a good one.
Or
Yeah.
Kimmich.
But Tom,
Kimmich.
I mean, is
Kimmich.
Müller, he's not retiring at the end of the season. He just quit the national team, right?
Yeah, I feel like he's got more in him.
No, I would be surprised if he left this year. I mean, his his positions played more between the years than I think anybody else
Yes,
probably
absolutely.
play until he's 40. Just how fast he is really doesn't matter at all. But yeah, I think Thomas Müller would probably be that. Or you could go long game and go for a Musiala.
Yeah, there's definitely some good ones that I'll have to think about, but we'll see. I guess I'll ask for your advice when that time comes. Maybe I can snack two. One for you, one for me.
Game
Yes.
plan, something. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. If you could get Müller and Kane, that would be great. And I'll just take Kane, and you can keep the first option, and we'll be good. Us big forehead guys got to stick together. That's why Kane and I, we really get along. That's what I was thinking. But the Club World Cup it's way off in the future. And first, we've got MLS Cup playoffs to deal with, which kicked off last night as of us recording this podcast on Wednesday. And to talk about that, we are going to bring in the effervescent Kevin Egan, former Atlanta United play-by-play commentator, which is going to make this first round of the playoffs interesting for Julian and Kevin, and now the MLS Season Pass host on Apple TV. thank you so much for joining the podcast, Kevin.
Oh, what's up, fellas? Great to be chatting a bit of ball with you, and great to be on with you, Julian, because, I mean, you were so much fun to cover in your Atlanta days and loved covering your career. I know, Zealand, you talked about it last week on your show, just the decorated career that you've gone on to have, Julian. It's been a joy to behold and witness, and you could become part of a select few if you go on and lift MLS Cup now with a third team.
Yeah, hopefully we're there. But I appreciate you being here. This is a little bit of a different setting for me, so bear with me as I go through this and as I learn, just like I did when I was in studio.
Julian,
yeah, you've got this.
You got to knock on wood. You said you might win a third MLS Cup. We've got to adhere to the tradition. There we go. It worked for the points record, and it worked for the Supporters Shield. So we're gonna see if it works. Third time's the charm. But you brought up the fact that he was an analyst on MLS Season Pass, Kevin. Now, obviously, Julian, like you were mentioning, is great on the field. Likely better than both of us. We don't know for sure. We've never lined up 1v1. But in your territory, Julian's first appearance on TV, how did he do? Honest opinion.
Honest opinion is phenomenal. All right. Let me break down the behind the scenes first, if that's okay, before we get into the on-air aspect.
Yes, that's what we're here, behind the scenes stuff.
Julian, talk about being accommodating. Talk about being like easy. Yeah, of course, I'd be willing to stick around and go to your studio. You've got kids, fly back the next morning instead, granted permission by the club, of course. And then, it jumps in the car with Sasha and I to come back. Just friendly with everyone, gracious with everyone, Julian. That, like, they're the world-class basics in life, I think, that sometimes people swing and miss on. More often than not, I find, to be honest with you. And you came into studio, an absolute natural, slotted right in, brought the energy, brought the passion, brought the love for the game, and tremendous insights from this season and beyond. So A+.
A+. I appreciate that. Being a good human, that's what I want to be first. So even if my analysis might have been wouldn't have been the best, I guess, I tried to be the best. I try to be a good guy. So that's always number one.
That's class, man.
No, and you made it easy. I mean, I think we got to go back to this a little bit because, I had my own car booked, for example, for after the game, and Kev was like, "No, jump in with us, like, come on," and it was him and Sasha Kleshin in there, and I think we were FaceTiming my daughters in the bathtub at one point, and just talking about the game, talking about what it's going to be like, all those types of things, and makes it super easy for me, and obviously. We've known each other for a long time since, like you said, that the days in Atlanta. So it was certainly a cool experience for me to kind of be part of, and an easy experience to walk into because of people like you.
Cheers. Zealand's like, all right, enough of this fancy schmancy nice stuff. Come on.
Hey, I'm a good. Speaking of professional, I'm a good professional. I'm checking my notes while you guys are talking. You're talking about. I know exactly where we're headed. Try and steer this ship and not run into an iceberg as I do so often. That's the goal. But no, Julian, you've talked about you want a future in this. It sounds like you might have maybe a future agent in this realm. Kevin might be able to put in a good word for you.
But this industry is just about word of mouth. And if you've got a good reputation, people within like you, it's, again, I go back to it, like world-class basics. There's no degree that you can get. It's not like you're trying to become a doctor or an accountant. It's a case of grind, be prepared, and not for analysts that have just finished their professional playing career, but for people like me that are, we're never near good enough to be a professional player, love the game, want to do the next best thing, and it's talking about it for a living. Be prepared to work from the ground up, making the tea and coffee, for free often at times, internships, whatever you have to do, and get in the door. And once you're in the door, then you garner a greater appreciation for what everyone does by making the tea and coffee, by being around those different rooms. And I just think it's you can be a sponge in this industry, and it's fun for me. And this is something that Alexi Lalas has often said on social media. And you can agree with Alexi or disagree with Alexi on so many things. One of the things he's always said that I absolutely agree with: being a broadcaster is a profession. You can't be a former player, and that's it. You've got to dive off, the deep end. Don't wait on the precipice. Like, you've got to decide, I'm going to be a broadcaster if you're going to do it. And there's certain guys that we work with that are just tremendous in that way, that have found that leap a little bit easier than some. Some, are a little bit hesitant. They don't want to criticize their former teammates, perhaps, or buddies, and they don't go to that level. They don't want to go to that level within themselves. So it's a challenge going from being a player to being a broadcaster. I guarantee you, from chatting with so many friends, it's not easy.
How did
That's good
you?
advice.
Yeah, no. If anybody's out there, write this down and write down the next answer as well, because I want to know how you ended up making that jump. Because you've obviously parlayed being the play-by-play guy at Atlanta United into being, the Chris Hansen of MLS, the guy that does Red Zone for MLS and hosts all these MLS shows. But how did you
Scott
initially?
Hansen.
All I know is he gives me the Octobox every Sunday, and I am there. Okay, Scott Hansen. I'm so sorry, Scott. Wherever you are,
good.
Lording over the other football. But how did you end up getting through the door to Atlanta United in the first place? How did you transition into the MLS universe?
Well, I was Chicago Fire before Atlanta United back in 2013. I moved to the US in 2009. I was working in TV over in Ireland for the national broadcaster there since 2004. So I was 19 when I started working there. I tore my ACL playing ball. Doctor said, look, you're going to get surgery. Back then it was in a couple of months, get yourself as fit as you can get before surgery. And then you're going to be out for the next 9 months after that. So it was a case of, right, like focus on something else. I'm not good at sitting still. And I'd wreck my own head, probably wreck all my family's heads at the time. And I just needed to focus on something else. And I always knew I wanted to get into television. So for me, I decided, see if you can apply to be in the audience on as many TV shows as you can possibly go to. So I did. And I ended up going to a few different political shows, had zero interest, hadn't got a Scooby-Doo what they were talking about. But what I was doing was studying the stage manager, studying the camera crew, studying the host, the analyst. Making sure that I gained something from it every time I'd leave. And one time, the floor manager that was there, his name is Johnny McGuigan, if I remember correctly, and I asked him for what essentially the script for the show, right? The running order, or the rundown, as they call it there. And he gave it to me. And back then in Ireland, they had all the phone numbers for all the staff that worked on the show on the rundown. So I ended up calling several people from the show, and I ended up calling the same guy twice. Like I called him back a couple of months later. And he said, look, there's a new agency actually that's just been set up. Don't call me again. Apply to be a showrunner making the tea and coffee. And I did, got that job. And that was the in then. So worked in Ireland for about 4 or 5 years, worked my way up from the teas and coffees, which again, I can't stress this enough. If you can get in the door as a cleaner, as a runner making tea and coffee, you are in the door and you are chatting with directors, you're chatting with producers, you're chatting with everybody. You've got the key to the building. And that's the key here. People want to go in as hosts. I meet college students and you hear from them all the time. How do I get your job, basically? Like, okay, it's like investing, it's like you want to become a bodybuilder. Day one, you know what? It's going to take you about 10 years to get there in the end, right? You want to become a professional soccer player like Julian. You don't just be Messi's teammate on day one. It takes 10, 15, 20 years of grinding, and that compounding over time will obviously benefit you. And that's been the case for me. Thankfully, I've had a lot of luck and a lot of breaks go my way. And I moved here in January 2009, and I got a job with the Big Ten Network. And that ended up leading to, I basically was trying to call college soccer games. And there was
Zealand's been there.
Yeah. I don't know if you, that's just, I wasn't even going to bring it up, but that was my job before I started doing YouTube. I was a play-by-play broadcaster. I did minor league baseball. I worked for ACC Network. I did 2 Olympics.
You've got a great voice. I'll say that.
Oh, that is, I the amount of time I spend tinkering with the settings on this mic to get it just absolutely perfect so that I can get that compliment. I'm just baiting that compliment. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, but you obviously, I didn't want to bring it up because you've risen far beyond wherever I got, but the college soccer stuff. So you came over to call college soccer, which for our audience that's not in the US is not that big of a deal in the US. I mean, it is fun, but
I was back in Ireland looking up the ladder at the legends in Ireland that were above me, and that weren't going anywhere. And for me, it was a case of how do you use this time now? I was 23. And I just thought, I've a US passport. My ma's from Chicago. So I just thought, go. And if you can work in the US, go and make it happen. Get a job with ESPN. Little did I know that nobody in America had an interest in Gaelic football or hurling or rugby or horse racing for the most part, or the things that I covered back there.
Which is a shame, by the way. Those are great.
No joke at all. I get into the Big Ten Network, And my first day, this guy says to me, look, can you start tomorrow? This is actually quite urgent. We had a guy, it's fallen through. Can you be a graphics producer? And I'm on the golf course with Buddy at the time. And I'm like, yeah, I can do whatever you need. Yeah. So he said, you're going to have a non-conference college football day, Big Ten. There's 12 games and you're going to run the graphics in studio. I'll never forget the feeling. I didn't know what a TFL was. I didn't know what any of these, these stats in college football meant.
How many games of American football had you watched when this question was asked?
Probably a grand total of 0. Like,
wow.
Genuinely. It was so anxiety inducing, but it's the type of thing that your survival instincts kick in, and hopefully your ability to deal with human beings and maybe empower one or two people to want to help you, and just those, again, basics, that being polite and saying, look, I've been thrust into this. I'm a little confused about this. I have a problem. I could really do with your help if that's okay. And then a lot of people will want to help you if you're nice and if you're kind. And luckily I got through that day, and then you learn. And I ended up starting a free online soccer show with the Big Ten network called BTN Soccer Report. Horrendous, like awful. But some of the guys coming through at the Big Ten at the time, I had interviews with them in studio, like Justin Miram, Will Bruin, these sorts of guys that ended up having great MLS careers. And then that led to the Chicago Fire, which led to beIN Sports, covering El Clasico at the Bernabeu and Camp Nou and these sorts of places. And then Atlanta United, CNN, WWE for 3 years. And yeah, been a journey.
What a wrinkle. What a great story, first of all. Congratulations. Amazing. But what a wrinkle the WWE is. Yeah. So what do I or Leo Messi sound like in WWE?
Trying to figure out what your move would be, Julian. It's got to be
WrestleMania is kind of
WrestleMania is perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, Hammer Time. I said that on one of your goals.
Oh yeah. True.
Hammer Time with Julian Gressel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's cool. Great years though. Nothing but gratitude for 3 phenomenal, unimaginable years. Like, covering WWE all over the world. And,
WWE. Yeah.
But now in this role, honestly, with 360, I'm really happy. Like, I'm really happy at work. I'm really happy with the balance I have with work and home life. And the last 3 years were silly. I was on the road 5-6 days a week. And as you know, like Julian, we're traveling with kids. It's just, it's tough. You want to spend a bit more time with them when you can. And it was unfair, like even on my wife, like just so hard with me gone so much. So way more balance now. And with the 360 job, I just love the job itself. It's great.
And speaking of that 360 job, which for people that might not know is the MLS version of NFL's Red Zone, just zipping all over the place to catch the biggest moments and all of the matches that are going on Apple TV. What is the hardest part of trying to do that? Because the advantage that Scott Hansen has is in American football, in the NFL, it's a little more obvious when a team is about to score. So what's the hardest part about trying to keep track of all of these games and get to the big moments?
You've nailed that though. That's such an important part that you mentioned, that you could be on the 15-yard line or whatever else, and they're going to go to the game, and it's easy to know when to go somewhere. Whereas in our beautiful game, you could have Chicho Arango, like he did earlier on in the season, score from the halfway line. Julian Gressel with his sweet right foot could decide to just hit one from distance, and you're completely caught. What we'll try to do is, and our producer Pedro, our producer earlier on in the season, Owen as well, we've had 2 great guys. They both have an incredible smell and understanding of the game. You can't bring in this producer that's been covering MLB and he's the top guy. You need to know the game of soccer. You need to have that feel for what's about to play out and understand that you need to control the show in that way. So I never want to cut away from a game to jump somewhere else. If all of a sudden Messi's on the ball and he turns, like, you'd be an idiot to do so, because something magical is going to happen. But I think for me, what my role is here is to try and meander through all the games and try and enhance the games and try and make sure that if anybody tunes in that doesn't have a clue what's going on, let's say, for example, Vancouver playing Portland tonight and doesn't understand the stakes, it's up to me to amplify the stakes, amplify the meaning of the game, so that they get a little bit of a hook and they feel like they want to stick around for longer and do so for every single match then.
Oh, so that sounds easy. That sounds, real easy. How many notes do you have in front of you when you're doing something like that?
It depends. I have notes in front of me that are basically like segue stats, quotes, little things like that. But stuff throughout the week, like I'll try and listen into as many coaches' calls as possible to understand where the coaches are coming from. Maybe there's a little quote, or I'll watch the shows back and I'll write down some quotes that Bradley, Kaelin, or Sasha or Andrew would say. And a lot of it, I just want to consume as much as possible during the week, and then be ready, because I can't look down. That's the thing about the show. It's like calling a game at a stadium. I don't want to have a million and one notes in front of me and look down and then Chicho Arango hits one from the halfway line and you're embarrassed. And how many times this season, whether it's Glesnes to Blake over the weekend, that a commentator might look down at a note and take your eye off the game, and then a mistake like that happens. And if you're caught as a commentator in that moment, that clip lives on forever and you're in trouble, like, so you can't take your eye off the ball. My producer, only a couple of weeks ago, I looked down for a second and he goes, "Screen," and the goal alert had gone up, and I was like, "We gotta go," and I don't want to have to look down ever. That camera one for me, that main monitor in studio has to be where I have my eyeballs at all times, and the guys can look elsewhere. Like we've got a 9-box, an 8-box, whatever you want to call it. Like whatever, it depends on the games, obviously, but where Sasha might be keeping an eye on what's going on in one game, Kaelin on another, but I've got to lock down on that main screen.
Yeah,
and as a result,
Zealand, as I was there, I wanna kind of interject here a little, because first of all, I didn't have any notes.
Hey, you got an A+ without notes. Okay.
Yes, exactly. It's like great. Okay, but Kevin he was sometimes, like me and Sasha and Bradley or even Kaelin, we were kind of like just chatting about some other game as we weren't kind of, our mics weren't on or whatever. And Kevin was sometimes so, like, he was sitting next to us, but he wasn't, like he was so kind of into the screen that he was just looking, kind of what's happening, like what he's describing here. Like he doesn't want to miss a thing, right? If that goaler comes up, our mics are hot and he's on, and he's kind of jumping in. So it was like we were like talking and he like wasn't really responding or anything like that.
It's awful. I know. And sometimes they'll say, "Kev," and I'll go, "Yeah, sorry, I was listening, I promise." And it's not that I'm not listening to them, but when we're live, like, the producer could say, "Coming back now," and I've got to be ready to say, guys, shh. Like I have to be. They call me Team Dad, and I have to be Team Dad, because if I'm not, it can go off the rails, because they have such a laugh, and they do. Like Sasha's constantly winding Kaelin up. Kaelin's she's so much fun. Bradley is one of the best humans you'll ever meet in your life, and they have a laugh. And I think that they've said to me, individually, they're like, "Look, it's your job just to keep this on the rails and be Team Dad, essentially, so they can have fun and they can be loose." But I also want to keep it, like I always say, there's a fine line between being fun and sloppy as a TV show, right? So you want to make sure that whatever they're talking about doesn't drip through when we're coming back on camera. So Sasha's always making fun of me because I go, "Shh, shh," like, we're coming back, and he's like, "Ugh." But the point is, we don't need any slipping through of whatever they're talking about on the air, and it just makes it sloppy then. So I'd much rather keep it clean, keep it as fun as possible. But yeah, Team Dad reporting for duty over here.
And the Team Dad is fixated on the monitor, as we've just heard. Is anybody on the planet? So I really do want to know your thoughts on MLS's MVP award, because there's been some things said, whether it be Sasha Kleston or Bradley Wright Phillips. Why are they hating on Messi? They're
not hating on Messi. They're not, and I'll defend them here on this. Like I changed my pick over the weekend, because my pick wasn't Messi until this past weekend, and it may have been. Like I was on the fence. Cucho's had a phenomenal season as well. Like he has, and the point about Messi is that he hasn't played nearly close to as much as all the previous MVPs within the league.
Yeah.
The difference is, when he comes on in a game like that, and his first touch is the assist for the game-winning goal, and he goes on to score a hat-trick, and he makes it look so easy. And he's made it look so easy ever since he stepped foot, on a pitch for Barcelona as a young kid. And it's not MLS. Like people will say, "Oh, MLS." He made La Liga defenders look like fools. He made, Liga 1 defenders look like fools. He was playing against a really in-form Bolivia last week and scores a hat-trick and his 2 assists in a World Cup qualifier. So this is just standard Messi. And I think if you did choose Cucho, if you did choose Lucho, I'm not going to say you're wrong, But right now, I think it's overwhelmingly Messi, given the way the season played out. And I also think the matches between Columbus and Miami should count. And in that game, Cucho misses a penalty, Messi scores a brace, and that was the Supporter Shield winning night. Like, that's a huge difference maker for me. Like, those moments really add up. So when I'm voting, I try and take it all into account. And it's not Messi's fault he's called up for Argentina, and he picks up an injury, of course, as well. But he is, without question, now my 2024 MVP.
Thank you. I'll pass on the message. He can go back to watching MLS 360. At least you, Sasha Kleshin and Bradley Wright Phillips. We'll talk about
the biggest
them
Messi
later.
fans. They're the biggest Messi fans. They are, like, they adore him, and his career. It's just, I feel like they're trying. We've been dissecting every single one of these guys all season long, and Lucho, like, we can't have recency bias when we vote. Lucho Acosta for the first half of the year was out of this world, and he did pick up a couple of injuries. And Cincinnati, I still don't know what their best 11 is, and I feel like that's affected his stock in the MVP race. And Cucho was disciplined. He was suspended within Columbus, misses some games, and then international duty now as well. So it was close, but for me now, it would feel odd in time to come if Lionel Messi's not the MVP this year.
And that might feel like the most contentious topic that we can get into, but I'm going to try and take the step into the next most contentious topic we can get into, which would be a preview of Inter Miami against Atlanta United in the MLS Cup playoffs. Obviously, Kevin's on one side. We've got Julian on the other. Kevin's impartial. I don't mean to imply otherwise, but is a somebody that has followed Atlanta United for years. We all checked out the game. Atlanta United blows a 2-goal lead, manages to win. What is this tie going to look like in a best of 3 now? You've got this plucky team from Atlanta United that scrapped its way to this point, and the Supporter Shield winners waiting for them with 25 Ballon d'Ors on their side.
It's turning into an incredible story right now, this game, because you're right. Like, it is a plucky team. Yet the crazy thing is, like, Julian will tell you, like, I don't know if you players really take note when it comes to preseason predictions by many people. Most people had Atlanta finishing ahead of Miami at the start of the year. As crazy as that is in the prediction, seriously, which seems wild now, but Atlanta, they looked really good towards the latter stages of last year. Giakoumakis was predicted to be the Golden Boot winner by a lot of people this year. Almada's a stud, like, there were reasons why Atlanta were looking good this year, and obviously their season went off the rails. They sell Giakoumakis, they sell Almada. Miranchuk is a really good player, but I don't think we've seen the best of him yet in Major League Soccer. So it feels really weird to me that the prediction said Atlanta were better than Miami. And also with Miami, we knew Messi would miss a lot of games. We didn't know, nobody knew that you'd go 8 for 9, Julian, while Messi's gone. That's just phenomenal. And that for me is why Tata is without question my coach of the year, by the way. And I'm willing to argue with anybody who says otherwise. And I've been in arguments recently with people, not arguments, good, healthy debates with people that have picked Wilfried Nancy, whom I love Wilfried Nancy as a coach, but it's Tata. Like, you can't, Leo Afonso scoring in the 93rd minute when you're down, 2 men in that game. Like, you think about the moments again this season, the Yannick Bright story, like some of the stories and the players that Tata's managed, and then also been able to handle superstars, like the greatest superstars of all time in our game, with young players like, whether it's, Sunderland or Yannick Bright, like Ian Frey. It's an incredible story. So Tata wins that. I've gone off on a tangent again.
No,
sorry, lads.
Hey, no, I'm glad that vote's more made up than the MVP vote. Yeah.
But the game itself, people think Miami are going to blow them out of the water. It may happen in the first game because I do think Atlanta are exhausted. The second game, though, at the Benz, 72,000 people, Julian, more than anyone what that's like. And they'll bring it for Atlanta United, and the players will have to step up and make it as difficult as possible. But there's no question, like, Miami overwhelming favorites in this one.
Julian,
that's what it says. That's how we perceive it too. That we are the favorites, and we want to stay true to that. And I think that's all I really have to say. That I certainly know what MLS Cup playoffs are like. They're not like the regular season, and honestly, Atlanta is the one team that we haven't won against all year. We've tied them and we've lost against them. So
why? What's been the difference there?
I don't know.
Messi was on the field in Miami.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm really not sure. I think that was right. I think even almost after this game, they fired the coach, so they were obviously not in a good place. So maybe we just kind of were just like lackluster about it in a way, which I know is different now, and I don't think that'll happen now. Where we kind of underestimate him and we kind of just go through the motions a little bit. You sometimes have those games throughout the year, but that might have been the case. And honestly, the away game was, what a wonder strike from Miranchuk to kind of tie the game in the end, right? So, but he has those moments in him, and then I think that is a big lesson for us to kind of take with us, that every team can have moments like that, and if we aren't, like, we went down to New England 2-0, and I was just on here on the podcast earlier talking about how that could have been such a great lesson for us, losing to a team like New England. But we end up going to score 6 goals and ultimately win the game very comfortably. Like, that might not happen. You might not be able to score 3, 4, 5, 6 goals, so you might be able to keep shutouts more and those types of things in the playoffs, and that's, as the rounds progress, I think, are going to be so much more important.
You've just reminded me of something. 2018, you're on the verge of winning the Supporter Shield, or going for the Supporter Shield. Remember, in Toronto, and you lose that game, and Tata makes big time changes ahead of the postseason, right? A change in system. Didn't you go to a central midfield instead of wing back?
Yep. Just more defensive minded. I think we went more defensive minded. I don't really see us changing that much right now. That's really not the type of players that we have. I think it's more a collective mindset that needs to change for us, and to be aware more of moments. And you have to close down Miranchuk whenever he's 20 yards around the box, because moments like that goal can happen.
I got to get it in, by the way, fellas. This one's free on Apple TV around the world. It's a big occasion, so Julian, tell all your family over in Germany.
They're watching anyway.
Tell friends. This is one that we're really looking forward to. I think it's going to be on in Times Square as well.
So I'm going to be wandering over there. Me and my signs in the background. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a really big game for us on Apple TV.
But that's obviously going to be really exciting to kind of see that game on Times Square. But I feel like the playoffs in the first phase, especially, is so spread out, where you have a game happening every day, for like the first 4 or 5 days, and that'll be exciting. Obviously, over the weekend there'll, I think, be a couple of games each day. But what is kind of maybe the matchup that you're looking forward to the most in this early round? And then what are some of your kind of dark horses, East and West? East, we obviously know a little bit more. West, we usually don't cover as much.
I figured you might go here, so I've got my FOTMob up here.
There you go.
Beautiful.
The knockout rounds. I think the matchup I'm looking forward to the most is Miami-Atlanta. I'm not just saying that. I think the Atlanta story of Rob Valentino and FML and this business of everybody against us, that's the way the Atlanta team feels right now. It's like there's all sorts of reports out there that there's coaches been brought in and interviewed at the club, and there's Rob managing the team right now, and he's a great guy, and the coaching staff are top people. So there's that mentality right now within the group. You could see it with Dax and Guzan and some of the older guard too. They want to hang on. This is Dax's final few games, perhaps, unless he keeps winning. So he's not going to want to lay down and rest anytime soon. I think that game for sure. Another game I love is Orlando-Charlotte, actually. I think Orlando-Charlotte has the potential for an upset. What Dean Smith's doing in Charlotte, I think, is pretty cool. Kalina is the goalkeeper of the year, in my mind, and good at the back. You had Tim Ream on the show last week. He's going to be a decent, a little bit of a strange addition at the start because they were so good defensively, and then he came in and they started leaking a lot more goals. But I think they're just getting used to him. He's getting used to them, all that sort. And he's playing on the left now. But further forward, Patrick Agyman, I call him Paddy on the show. Paddy Agyman has for me so much potential. Bradley said it from day one when he saw him. He's like, this guy is soft touch, powerful vision. Like, he's got something about him. And I think that could be a stunning upset if Orlando, who've been the best team, I think, maybe certainly with 2 weeks to go in the league season, they were the best team since July 1st in the league in terms of form. And that could be a bit of a shocker. And then elsewhere, I think Minnesota could take RSL. The Galaxy will be raging still from decision day. to lose the way they did.
Yeah.
The final second of the game, to lose home field advantage. You know how big that is, Julian. Like, the Galaxy have not lost at Dignity Health Sports Park all season. So to have that number one seed, to welcome LAFC, perhaps, potentially, in the Western Conference final to their stadium, instead of having to go into downtown LA, is huge there. And they really did miss the boat on that one, and they messed up. And now let's see if it costs them.
And I'm gonna drill in on the obviously good to focus the audience. We have a significant number of people that watch this podcast that are learning MLS, and so this sort of stuff to help guide their eye when they're checking this out on Apple TV is beyond awesome. But I'm going to take you outside the top 2 seeds here. So no LA, no Inter Miami, no Columbus. Who is the most likely team outside of those top 2 seeds that could go on and win the whole thing? Is it somebody like Orlando who's been hot in the back half of the season, or is there somebody else you have in mind?
I don't think, and I'm just going to eliminate these teams. I don't think the Red Bulls. I don't think New York City, Cincinnati, I feel have really fallen off. And I think I said this earlier, I still don't know what their best team is. Orishano was playing nearly as a striker in the last game. Atlanta, I think Miami will take care of business there. And maybe Seattle, but I really do think there's a gap. I really do believe that it's Miami and Columbus on one side and LA Galaxy, LAFC on the other. A lot of people seem to think LAFC are far superior to the Galaxy. I don't see that. In fact, my dream final would be Miami playing host to the LA Galaxy. That would have the David Beckham story. It would welcome Ricky Puig, obviously, who played with the Barca boys. And Ricky's been tremendous this season. With the way they transition, with the way they counterattack, Gabriel Peck, newcomer of the year for a lot of people. It's either going to be him or Suarez. That, for me, would be an absolutely sensational final. One for the record books, one that all the celebs around the country will want to try and be at. It'll be top class, Julian. What do you think? Miami, LA Galaxy.
Sounds good to me. As long as that team in pink wins at the end of the day, I'm happy with it. But I have this thing where I actually thought about this today. In the beginning of training, I was like, wait, last year I played Atlanta in the first round as well in the best of 3 with Columbus. Mm-hmm. After that, it could be Orlando, which I also played last year. And then I played against Cincinnati last year too. So this could all kind of line up. And then LAFC in the finals could all kind of be a repeat of my last year's playoff experience with all those teams. But,
I was thinking from an Atlanta perspective there, Julian. They had to get through Joseph Martinez, right? Their greatest player of all time. Now they have to get through Tata Martino and Julian Gressel, right? Two folks that are just so beloved here in Atlanta. You could potentially then have to get through, Miles Robinson or Darlington Nagbe down the line. So they're going to have to knock out an awful lot of their old friends if they're going to try and win it again.
Well, I hope they don't get the chance to do any more past us because we will take care of
Can't see it happen.
I hope all the Atlanta fans don't take that the wrong way. But
dude, you're loved in Atlanta. You know that, right?
Win, so.
You know that. Like the fans in this city, and I see it, you still see the Atlanta United flags driving around the area and stuff. They just have such love for they always will. The 17 team, the 18, 19, then when Tata left and things then started to fall away, 2020, 2021. Hasn't been the same, but there's big changes, I think, coming in the off season. Atlanta United needs to be a really big club in Major League Soccer because when the Benz is bouncing, Julian, there is nothing like it in MLS.
100%. Yep. 100%. Totally agree. Hopefully they can get back to that, but start next year. Kev, so who's your MLS Cup winner to finish this?
Do I have to say Miami? I think I do.
You don't have to. You don't have to. No.
I think if Miami gets past Columbus, and I'm going to go that far, I would think that's going to be the Eastern Conference final. And I don't think that's an easy game at all. Columbus are going to have serious revenge on their minds. They won't be afraid to play their brand of ball down at your place. So if Miami get by Columbus, I'll pick Miami to win it in a like a blockbuster Major League Soccer final that we'll all want to watch and be at. So I'll go Miami. I'll go for my dream final then. I'll go Miami, LA Galaxy, and Miami to take it.
Okay, I'll take it.
And then you will join that select group of players. I think there's only 4 players, Julian, that have won with 3 different teams. Yeah,
wow.
It's pretty unique company to be in. And Darlington, I think, is the only one that's won it 4 times with 3 teams. And some of those, to be honest, are technicalities because Houston and San Jose have that relationship that the team went from one city to another, and a lot of the players went with the team back in the day.
Okay.
So it's in a way it's a bit of a cheat code, but yeah,
Well,
you keep winning, Julian.
we'll worry about it when we get there. Let's win first,
yeah.
and then we'll worry about the
So-
technicalities. Yeah.
Exactly. If you want to win MLS Cups, sign Julian, and if you want to have the best soccer show on TV, sign Kevin Egan. That's what we know. We know how to do it.
That's it.
Kevin, thank you so much for
way
joining
too
us,
kind.
and thank you even more for picking Inter Miami to win the whole thing. We appreciate it.
Yes,
What a pleasure.
absolutely.
Cheers, fellas. Thanks for having me. Love to come on again.
Thank you to Kevin. It's time for your questions, or the one that we haven't already answered, but 2 more questions that y'all sent in for this week. The first from Carolina Campanella, 3905. Said, this is my favorite episode. Anything sports science related is my happy place. And I love the specificity that Julian went into regarding training routines for professional athletes. And props to Zealand for guiding the convo with his questions. I swear I didn't just add that in there. That's actually as part of the question. I have so many follow-up questions, but the one I'll ask is, to what extent do players track their own metrics? Obviously, the sports scientists are tracking a player's strain, but to what extent do they track their own strain, sleep, recovery, etc.?
So if you watch the YouTube videos, you can see that I'm wearing an Oura ring, which is a sleep tracker and obviously, strain tracker throughout the day and kind of stress tracker as well. So for that, I wear that daily. I don't wear it during trainings, but I wear a heart rate strap every training. And obviously we have the GPS vests and GPS pods on every training session. So every yard, every step is counted. And there's guys that are more into this and there's guys that are less into it. And I'm a guy that wants to know everything. Absolutely everything. I try and optimize things, try and see how certain sessions, how certain things make me feel. Hence the sleep tracker, how my sleep is impacted, all those types of things that, with 2 little kids, sometimes you get thrown around a bit. So it's certainly difficult at times, but I am very much into tracking my own metrics. I usually know after every session, I usually ask of how much I ran, how much high speed running and all that type of stuff I did. And based off of that, I adjust, my recovery needs, my next day's session, where maybe not the on-field session I can adjust so much because that's more up to the coaches, but how much I do in the gym, what type of treatment I get, what type of extra recovery I do, that type of things. Maybe I go to my wife and be like, hey, today you really got to take the kids because it was a really, really tough session, or something like that, but it's really that. So for me, I am really, really much into knowing my metrics. And I feel like as throughout the years, you kind of learn a lot about your body, learn a lot about the metrics and about, loads and when to load, how to load, what makes you feel good, all those types of things.
So the follow-up question I have then on behalf of Carolina here is, do you have you seek these sports scientists out and you're like, hey, can you basically CC me on the emails that are telling me what's happening? Or do they seek you out and sit you down and go, we're having a weekly meeting about your high intensity sprint percentage or something?
No, I usually in the beginning of the year, or kind of as you kind of develop a relationship, they kind of understand that I'm really interested in that stuff. So if I keep coming to ask them about things, then they'll get it in a sense, right? So the way it works for me actually is that our sports scientist, she usually sends me my whole breakdown of the day as a WhatsApp message whenever she's done with the report, of just me and my data on the day of how fast I ran, my max heart rate, my high distance speed, my total speed, my zone 4 running, like all that type of stuff. So she usually just sends it to me.
Running. I don't even
Zone
know what
4 is just like it's all based on speed. I think it's just below high speed. I don't know the exact speeds.
well, you got to ask them. You got to find this out.
Speeds categories. Yeah, sorry, I don't know exact speed categories, but Zone 4 is basically like a fast pace, but not high speed. Not like 80%. I want to say it's probably like 60 to 80%.
This is a whole world that I just
Yes.
never thought about the fact that
Yes.
it existed in the first place.
But do you track anything for your marathon training or anything like that? Like, do you track your sleep? Obviously, as a streamer, that might be tough at times, I feel like.
For my own sanity, I probably shouldn't track my sleep.
Or your screen time. Don't track your screen time, dude.
No, we cannot do that. It's work, you know.
Yes. It's work.
I don't track probably nearly as much as I should, but I will say I've started to get into the food more. Like, for example, I woke up at 4:30 today, but I didn't start running until 6:45. So I pre-made oatmeal and like had it in the fridge and then took it out and kind of warmed it up in the pot.
Also called overnight oats.
Ah, there you go.
Yes.
Well, my overnight oats, because I've always known what they were called in the business, in the industry of sports science. So I had overnight oats. You sliced up some banana on top of it. Try to actually get like fuel into the body. But as much as I hate waking up at 4:30, it does work. I mean, I think the biggest comparison between me training for the New York Marathon is just some amateur that's lacing up a couple of shoes and you know, tracking every breath you take for 9 months, is paying attention to what affects your body in certain ways.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll be running and I'll be absolutely miserable. Then I'm like, okay, why am I more miserable today than yesterday? What did I do different? What did I eat? Maybe I had a chocolate bar 2 days ago. I'm going to pretend that that's the reason, right? Like you try and figure out, okay, I ate this meal. Let's try not to eat that meal and then see if I feel better. Or maybe I didn't bring enough water. I brought too many electrolyte drinks, or I brought, it's like trial and error. You probably don't have to go through as much trial and error, but I feel like I am experimenting on myself to find a way to be as not miserable as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you could take it a step further, which I actually did earlier this year. And we can talk about this another show because this is opening up a whole other can. But I did gene testing.
Oh, we're in the rabbit hole now.
Yes,
Hello.
we are. Yes.
Okay.
I
would
Carolina
love
got us
to
in
talk
there.
about. Yeah. We're gonna leave that cliffhanger there because I would actually love to talk about that stuff. We have another question, believe it or not, we have to get to. Remind us to talk about that. This is from @DDETO and then a bunch of other stuff, but you probably know who you are by now. Love this podcast. Curious what Inter Miami does for team building. Do you do anything outside of the training grounds? Is Tata at every training session? How often do players interject their thoughts on tactics? And also, congratulations on winning the Supporter Shield. So what's the team building philosophy? Do you guys go on a rafting trip together?
Not really. I mean, we honestly this year we've had a couple of asados, those cookouts kind of for lunch. And honestly, we've spent a lot of time from very early on the road together, and that is team building in itself. So we haven't really done a lot of stuff outside of the facility or outside of travel. And usually Tata likes to do that when he feels like we need it. But I even haven't had the feeling that we really needed it this year. It's been a good year. We've spent a lot of time together. Honestly, I've probably seen those guys more than I see my family at times. So we talk about those week-long road trips, or even going back to the beginning of the year where we went to the World Tour. Those types of things, they bring you together, and then winning also helps. Where you have good times after in the locker rooms and stuff. It doesn't need to be long; it just needs to be meaningful at times. And we've had a good amount of moments like that. And Tata is at every training session. That was part of the question, right? Yes.
Yeah, sorry, it was like 3 parts. How often do players interject their thoughts on tactics? We'll give them all 3 questions, but remember this, DDETO. We did this for you.
How often do players interject? I mean, we have thoughts and ideas all the time. Some guys voice them more than others, and some guys have more kind of input into that than others. But I could go up,
Julian.
I could go up to like Tata or an assistant coach and tell them what I think and what I see. And they're always open for that, because we are the ones that are experiencing the tactics live on the field. And a good coach, in my opinion, should be open to receiving that feedback. They might be able to say, no, you should just be doing it the way I think is the right way. That is okay. But at least, have a dialogue, have a conversation. And that's usually what it's like, where sometimes guys like I said, have a bit more input, sometimes some guys have a little bit less, but the communication is always there.
And that is probably a good way to maintain a healthy dressing room, if I had to imagine. Morale is at 100. That's what we've learned from this podcast. Thank you again to Kevin Egan for hanging out with us and talking MLS playoffs today. Keep your YouTube comments and questions coming. We're getting to them. Promise we'll hit a couple next week as well. And we will, of course, announce the winner of the signed Inter Miami ball soon. Watch previous podcasts to figure out how to enter, but it's signed by the entire team, so it's really cool. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, I guess. We're YouTubers. Bye.